Welcome to our strategy huddle on competitive advantage, which was edited from a longer webinar.
The bottom line for competitive advantages is we've got to know them well, and that's what actually we lever to drive the value that we deliver to the customers. So that's another reason that I've used that 87% number, because I just wanted to revisit this competitive advantage factor. And in particular, I want to highlight the fact that we're going to show a little slide at the end about today's environment. So with that said, as we transition here, I've got a poll, and it should be up on your right-hand side, and it's not a real difficult one, and I'll highlight it as we get to the end. But the point is this will really underline the competitive advantages and so forth. And so it just takes a moment. It says, what company does a great job of competing on price? And fill that in, and Ryan will keep track of that. It's on your right-hand side, and we'll revisit that at the end of my 10 minutes here. So Ryan, let's move beyond this and go on to just a quick summary about the competitive advantages. I'm quite sure all of us as seasoned strategists understand it, but then also we've got a number of people that are joining us that they're kind of on the edge of this thing. And so for folks that are in the nonprofit arena or in the churches and so forth, they'll say, well, we don't have competitive advantage. Well, another word you just call is comparative advantage. But the whole point is we all compete. We all compete in one form or manner. We have limited resources. We need to use those effectively and efficiently. And we also have to deliver this value to our target market, whoever they may be. If you sit down with a group of pastors, even though they say they don't compete, the first thing they'll be asking you about is how many services do they have, or how many people, how many butts in the pews, and so forth. So competition and understanding what makes us unique is really critical. So Michael Porter, the old guru of strategy, has got a real good definition there. And I like his last part of the sentences is to perform activities different than our competitors. That's really critical. And we've turned that around a little bit, and we just show competitive advantage. What your company does better than anyone else out there in the marketplace is what makes you unique. The point with this is because in the strategic planning process, in one form or manner, you should see your competitive advantages built out, nurtured. They're in the long term to make your organization effective. So you have to make sure that they're part of your competitive advantage. Another point that just to highlight the imminency of all this is that there's a Wall Street Journal article from just a couple days ago, and I'm just going to read one quote. The title is called "After Easy Money Managing in a New Era," that came out on May 14th. But the point I'm trying to highlight is for anyone running a business or a nonprofit or a church, the more important point is that no matter how fast the turnaround comes, success is unlikely to get easier. So in other words, they're pointing at strategic competitive advantages. The plates have shifted beneath the global economy in ways that will increase competitive pressure and squeeze even the most recession-hardened businesses. So more than anything else, we really need to revisit our competitive advantages and see what they look like in this new environment. So hopefully they don't look like this next slide. Hopefully we're not unique, lost in the maze of everything. We've got to stand out. We've got to have something that really sets us apart, and I kind of like this slide. So how do we build? How do we not be like this? How do we stand out? So we need, as part of our developing our strategic plan, competitive advantage is the cornerstone. So what we need to do when we start building this is, it's kind of like a 2-3 step process. So I'm making a list, and I've got another slide that'll go a little bit deeper in this, but what unique strengths we have, and we all typically have a bunch of them. Then the core competencies are these unique strengths that we do better than our competitors. Okay, and then of these core competencies we have, how do we actually deliver value? How do we provide value to our target market? So another perspective on this, and it's a good thing this will be part of the PowerPoint that's going to be up there so you can revisit and look at this. Uniquenesses and strengths. We all have a ton of them. Pull them out of your SWOT and so forth. And when we do our work, a lot of times people say, they give us a laundry list of stuff. And, say, well, we got a great team. Well, you better have a great team because everybody needs good employees to compete in this world. If you have a great team that's got some special qualifications, that's got some special training and whatever else, then that's fine. So let's really look at strategic strengths, strategic weaknesses. Then you need to start nurturing. You need to start building these. And then as they become a little better, then you start lining them up. Then you start lining them up in the marketplace compared to your competitors. Which of these that you say are unique strengths and so forth do you do really well in comparison to them? Then you need to leverage this stuff. Leverage, in other words, use this to really push your organization forward. Take those limited resources that you have and provide value and understand your target market really, really well. Part of these competitive advantages can look like patents. Those are, not everybody has those, but that's an example of being intangible. The more intangible competitive advantages are, the better they are, because tangible ones, as you can well imagine, are replicable. So if you can develop something that's internal, that's intangible, that's helpful, customer focus is another great competitive advantage. Being a really great customer researcher and understanding customers as well. Two examples, Facebook and Google, they got a ton of information on their customers, and it really does help them and make them look a whole bunch different. So then how can we assess these competitive advantages? Ask your customers. Be blunt about it. What do they want? How do they want their value delivered? Because this environment is changing, and ask them what they really need. And then continue to look on the web, or if a lot of your business is local, go by your competitors, go in the retail establishment, check it out, and so forth. Then take these competitive advantages and line them up and compare them in the marketplace. How do they stack up against your competitors and so forth? Develop a positioning map. If you're fortunate enough to have an organization where you have a lot of customer-facing personnel, ask your employees, because they're interacting with your customers every day. What I'd like to do is show you a positioning map. And there it is. This is one that we did for our organization, and as Ryan reminded us, this is something that was from a couple of years ago because we have repositioned ourselves. But a positioning map helps you to see how you stack up in the marketplace against your competitors. And the axes can change. You call those. In this case, we're looking at the size of the companies and versus the pricing of the product. But a lot of times in competitive advantages, what we will do is we'll say, what do your competitors really, really want? What do they have? I mean, what do your customers really, really want? So, if they're after a certain type of, say, product delivery, that might be a basis for one of the axes, and maybe the other axis might be in how well that you understand your customers. So that would be one way maybe that you could look at the competitive landscape. But this will help you really understand how your competitive advantages stack up in today's environment. This positioning map will provide the basis for taking a really hard look at where you're at. So then a couple takeaways on this, on the competitive advantage area as we roll through this. As Michael Porter said, successful companies deliberately make choices to be unique and different in what they do. It's part of their strategy meetings, and we're talking about accountability a little bit. You know, it's in front of mind all the time. What do we do that makes us different? How do we deliver value? Another way we can make them better is, okay, part of our strategic planning process, let's have an action list of what we're going to do to try to nurture our competitive advantages. But the bottom line is, remember, this has got to be part of your strategic plan, and by developing competitive advantages, this is a way that we deliver superior organization performance, and it doesn't make any difference whether we're a nonprofit, we're a for-profit, or we're a church for that matter. So in any case, these uniquenesses, these competitive advantages are critical in today's changing environment. So Erica, excuse me, I forgot about the poll. Ryan reminded me, thanks Ryan for bringing me back to that. The poll, everybody can see, is that folks voted on Walmart. Southwest definitely has a very low price. Walmart probably is the organization that it comes to forefront in most people's mind because they're all about efficiency and from the time that they receive the product to the cross stock to the warehousing to getting it into the organization. But what I'm trying to drive home with this is none of us can really be Walmart, don't have those resources. Price, unless you're Walmart, is a really poor competitive advantage because it can be copied. It doesn't last long. So if you're considering price or you think you're leaning on price at this point in time in this marketplace, I would revisit your competitive advantage and maybe how you can reposition or repackage it and use that price as part of really delivering a whole package of value. So pricing in the long run is a competitive advantage that is not sustainable. Thanks for reminding me about that, Ryan. Erica, any thoughts on that poll?
Well, so I was just thinking that, you know, we when you showed the positioning map that we put together for our organization, you know, I think the power of positioning maps is, as you indicated, just a visual representation of where's their white space in the marketplace. And so I was thinking that our positioning map, of course, one of the axes was price, and we'd like to just re-emphasize what you said about the fact that, you know, pricing obviously is not an effective competitive advantage. It just happens to be what we were mapping in this case, but it would be effective to actually create a positioning map with axes that has potential your basis for competing on them, at least one of them, and see how the market shakes out in that regard. So just kind of wanted to highlight that. Another thing I was just thinking about, Zappos, and I'm sure most of us are familiar with Zappos, which is the online retailer that Amazon just purchased, and they created their competitive advantage based on customer service. And I would have said, you know, 12 months ago, your customer service is just a price for entry. So it's kind of like, you know, being operationally effective. You have to do that in order to stay in business. Well, you know, they created value and they created an amazing business model and obviously a very valuable business model such that Amazon purchased them around a competitive advantage of customer service. And so I think it's sort of interesting because that flies in the face maybe of some stuff which just seems super obvious. So that was just one interesting, huge value creating move that they made, and it worked. So anyhow, just some thoughts on that.